Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. On this week's episode, I actually do an interview with Douglas Bakkum. Douglas is the founder of Shift Crypto and the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. They've actually been sponsoring the show for I think, almost a year now. So I'm really glad to have him on. And, this is not, I don't want you guys to think this is like, oh, they're your sponsor. So obviously you had them on for that reason. No, it is I've I only take on sponsors that I really believe in and I think are valuable, and a product that I would use and think are valuable. And so this has been, I think, in the works for a while here to interview Douglas. You hear about the origins of the company, but I thought it was also good to get his take on, you know, what exactly is self custody because sometimes I need refreshers all the time to try and remember how to explain to people how you get yourself a hardware wallet and how the coins get onto it. Uh, so it was a good refresher. And then also I didn't know this. He was into he studied neuroscience and among other things, and that led him to being, now business owner of the Shift Crypto, which creates the Bitbox. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. I really did, and I also want you guys to check out the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. So I'll talk to you about it, but there's also a way that you'll be able to, if you have a Bitbox, you'll be able to buy Bitcoin through the Bitbox app and put it right into your wallet. And it's KYC free. So that's pretty awesome. So go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple and use the promo code Bitcoin made simple to get 5% off your order. And also Upstream Data, shout out to them and their amazing black box, which has quieted my Bitcoin miner and also made life in the house much more livable because it was, a little difficult occasionally. I would get this look from my wife whenever we would just hear in the basement. I was like, I know. Thank you for letting me mine Bitcoin in our house. Um, and then last but not least, my company, Movies Plus. Go to mymoviesplus.com and use the promo code Cory to get $5 off your subscription. And like I keep telling you guys, they're flying off the shelves, so you're going to get them. But we just released the dividers, so you guys are going to check out the dividers. It is about when Shia LaBeouf got trolled by 4chan, and they played capture the flag with him, and even though he didn't want the flag to be captured, so it's a great story, and I really, really enjoyed that movie. One of my favorite docs, and I'm not just saying that because it's a Movies Plus original, and I'm an executive producer on it. I came into it at like the end, so it was all in place, and I was like, "Whoa, like this is perfect." So you guys will really, really like that. And then, as always, if you want to reach out to the show, just reach out. The email is bitcoinmadesimplepodcast@gmail.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Cory_Tusick, and I will talk to you guys later. So you're in Switzerland, right?
I am.
I talked about this before, but yeah, my best friend in the world is in Switzerland.
Okay.
Yeah, he's my roommate from college, so I think it's fitting that Switzerland houses a freedom focused company like yourself, because they're very you know libertarian, I guess it feels like to me.
Yeah, I would say we're probably not the only one.
Yeah.
Switzerland has a bit of a reputation for that, and also beneficially like privacy, independence, taking self-responsibility is a big one. And so
Wh-
I think it really fits well for the Bitcoin ecosystem also.
oh yeah, absolutely. What brought you to Switzerland?
Yeah, I'm actually originally from America, grew up
Hmm.
in Wisconsin, and I originally came to Switzerland. It's been a while now, over 10 years ago, to be a scientist, actually. I have a PhD in neuroscience, technically neuroengineering. And I came to the university here, which is called ETH Zurich. Uh,
Mm.
ETH doesn't stand for Ethereum.
Yeah.
It's more like I guess the MIT of Europe. So a really well-known technical university here. And yeah, I was a group leader in a neuroscience department.
Oh wow. So neuroscience department. Um, how does that switch you over to Bitcoin? I guess the better question would be, where did Bitcoin enter your life and how did you get
Yeah,
started?
and what the
What
heck is
got
the
the bug?
relationship to neuroscience to hardware?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there is a relationship. We're actually, believe it or not, we were a spinoff of the university. Um,
Oh, okay.
but anyways, yeah, let's start with Bitcoin. And so um, after I came to Switzerland, before that, actually, I was on a postdoc at the University of Tokyo. So I was in Japan for a while, and I was visiting Japan in 2013, and that's when I first saw the word Bitcoin ever. And that was on the front page in really big letters of one of the really well respected Japanese newspaper. And, it's in English, so it sticks out
Yeah, yeah.
really big letters. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And I had no idea. I thought, okay, this is really strange that there's some monopoly money on a front page of a newspaper. And so that night I started researched it for a couple of days, caught my interest. Again, I have an academic background. And so what really caught my interest was kind of the scientific side of Bitcoin in the sense that it solved an outstanding unsolved problem in computer science, which is called the Byzantine generals problem,
Hmm.
which to put it in simple terms, it's basically how can you trust two people on the internet when they're communicating. It was a problem for Byzantine generals in a war, and it's also a problem for transferring money. For example, how can you be sure that the money you send to me over the internet isn't double spent? So you didn't send it to someone else, and then you're fooling both of us, and you get twice the bang for your buck. And Bitcoin solved that,
Hmm.
and that was really fascinating to me. And at the time, I didn't know if Bitcoin was the solution or not. But I thought this specific solution it solved, and the techniques it used to solve it were going to be immensely powerful. And so I got hooked quite quickly.
Nice. So then, how did you when did you form the company? When did you said it was a spinoff from the university? So I guess at that point you come over to the university and kind of spend some time, you know, learning
So
more about Bitcoin, and then next thing you know, you're creating a hardware wallet.
yeah, so came back. So again, that was in 2013, and yeah, one of the first things I did, I guess a lot of people is try to trade, make some money off of trading, make some arbitration bots and things like that. And I learned quite quickly that if you want to do that and make money, it's kind of a full-time job.
Yep.
And I wasn't very good at it. Um, and then also, you have to buy some coins, right? And having a bit of a technical background. So before neuroscience, I was also a mechanical engineer. And so I have some coding, some AI kind of skills, and I could understand a bit the security issues. And it took me maybe 2 weeks to actually feel comfortable holding the coins I bought using Electrum and an offline computer back then. And I thought, okay, if this is going to take off, this is just it's a no go. No one's going to be able to have the patience to go through this, at least the wider community. Um, and the concept of hardware wallets existed at that time, but there were none on the market. And this was, I guess, in 2014 when I switched over to actually kind of playing around with hardware wallets. And I thought, okay, um, at the time, there's also a lot of scams going on in the hardware, Bitcoin hardware, specifically with Bitcoin mining equipment,
Mm-hmm.
where, for example, the price was starting to go up, and there's a lot of people wanting to get into mining. They saw the profits you can make, and so it was very popular. Miners were sold out, and so there'd be pre-sales, and you get a lot of money funded into these, and then oftentimes there would be no hardware on the end, and people would run away with your money. And I thought, okay, I could see that happening with hardware wallets also, and so I just decided to build my own. And that was in probably 2014. I started working on that. That was in my spare time. at home, just as a hobby. And then turning that into a company, I guess, again, I was lucky I was in Switzerland because there's also it's a small country, but a really strong community here, Bitcoin community especially. Some of the core dev founders are here. One happened to live in the same city as me in Basel in Switzerland, Jonas Schnelli. And I met him at a meetup, Bitcoin meetup. I started showing people my prototypes I was working on. I got really great feedback, a lot of encouragement. And then Jonas also started helping me out, and we decided to make a company about it, try to bring it to the people.
Nice. Um, so back then, I mean, because I wasn't in Bitcoin, I mean, I was paying attention to it, but I wasn't in it nearly, to the level of like owning it and trying to get self custody.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a novel concept at the time, right? I mean, it wasn't. Did people basically have software wallets? I mean, I've heard of, people I've talked to that were mining Bitcoin in like 2010, and they burnt the wallets onto like CDs and stuff like that. So, I mean, walk me through that. Like, what was it like back then?
What was it like back then?
I mean, did you just hold it on like Mount Gox or somewhere else, or?
I think probably the main things were Mount Gox. Yeah. And so
Hmm.
yeah, I lost some money there.
Yeah.
That leaves a lasting impression. Um, good argument for hardware wallet. And then Electrum, the software wallet, was quite popular. And so that's where I had most of my funds. Um, and a few others like Mycelium and so things like that. But I would say the biggest issue back then was the on ramps and off ramps because there's no traditional uh, ramps available. So you had to
Hmm.
use these really sketchy third party services that you've never heard about before to make transfer money because no one wanted to bank Mt. Gox, of course. Um,
We're kind of heading
and
back there anyways. I'll get to that in a second, but yeah.
Yeah, true. um, and yeah, it was a bit of the Wild West at the time for sure.
Um, and so what exactly, I guess, is a hardware, like how does the wallet exist? Because so I've explained it to people a little bit, like it's a security, it's like a safety deposit box, is your address and blah blah blah. And I go through that, but I still have a hard time because they're like, okay, so like I'll show them the Bitbox, families over or something, and they're like, well, how
Yeah,
are your coins on there? And I
yeah,
really don't have a great answer for them. So help me out there understanding what exactly a hardware device is.
I'll try. So a thing you can surprise them with, I guess, is their coins are actually not on there. And so the coins, the record of the coins is all public information in the blockchain itself. And so what a hardware wallet does is it holds the keys to access those coins. And so I think probably wallet itself is a misnomer. It's more like a keychain. Like you have a in your pocket, like a key to your door, a key to your car, and so on and so on. And each key can unlock the coins on your address that you got coins sent to. And so those are the things, of course, that's important to keep safe.
Hmm.
Right? And the common saying since the very beginning is not your keys, not your coins. And so self custody is crucial because if you have your coins in an exchange, you don't have coins, you just have IOUs, and if the exchange goes bust, you're out of luck.
Hmm.
If you have the coins on a software wallet, there's a lot of malware, a lot of thieves out there. Um, you're very susceptible to getting hacked. And so the best way to keep these keys is in an offline device, which is exactly what hardware wallets are designed for. And so they're basically miniature computers with a single purpose, which is to keep your keys safe, to generate them safely, store them safely, recover them safely if you need to recover from a backup, and just never let them touch the internet. Never let them touch your computer. Never let them touch your phone, where malware or or hackers could see them.
Hmm. And so whenever you, I mean, because I under so it's public information. It's the address is created. Is it the hardware device that's creating the address, and then
Yeah,
that gets recorded on the blockchain?
yeah, exactly. So the hardware wallet itself, so you need a very good source of entropy, randomness, so that no one can guess what your keys are. I think all hardware wallets are pretty good at that now. But there were some issues, like back in 2013, there's a lot of issues with software wallets and web wallets where people could guess the random numbers because they
Mm,
weren't using a good source of randomness. And so, yeah, that's step one to generate these keys. And from these keys, it's called uh, private key, public key cryptography. So you have a private part, which you use to sign, and a public part, which you can give to others. And using that public part, that's where the addresses come. And so that's what you give to people. That's what you send to the blockchain. That's what the blockchain is keeping track of, is which key, which address has how many coins.
okay, so like you have, um, I guess you buy a Bitbox, you open it up. Is the when you start up the device, it what generates what's used for the entropy to generate the random address?
Yeah, so good question. That's an important one. So on the Bitbox, we actually use, I believe, five different sources of entropy, five different sources of randomness. And using some cryptographic magic, um, you can basically cryptographically combine all these sources such that the strength of the output is as strong as the strongest key, not the weakest key. So you can only add strength um, to the entropy sources. And so with the Bitbox, we have it's called a true random number generator on our secure chip. We have a true random number generator on our microcontroller, which is a mini computer. We also take entropy from the user itself through the user password, but also the app running will send some random numbers to the device. And the fourth one is something we set ourselves at the factory installation, which is randomness from the computer we use to do the factory installation. And so using all these sources, we can be quite confident that you have a really strong source of entropy, strong source of randomness. And moreover, you're not susceptible to a failure in any one part of those. You have to fail in all five parts.
Mm, okay. Um, and then so the address gets created when you start up the device, and when you want to send coins, say from the exchange, it's doing is notifying, like when you send them from the exchange, the miners and nodes verify that these coins went from this exchange wallet to this new address, and it puts them in that it moves them, it gets verified, after all the verifications, and then it's cemented. um and then in the future you can send more coins to that same address, but each wallet, right, makes, like, I mean, how many addresses does a wallet make?
Um, in in practice, it's basically infinite,
Mm,
um, and there's a protocol based off of, or a protocol that's based off of, um, which existed, I guess, started around 2013 or 2014 also,
mm,
where you can, from a single, what's called a seed, you can derive basically an infinite number of addresses and keys. And so you just say, okay, I want a key, the first key, the second key, the third key. It's called the key path. And you can get all the addresses to your wallet from a single seed.
so that's all right, that's another fascinating part, is the seed phrase. Like, whenever I try and tell people, they're like, well, how do you unlock it? I'm like, oh, it's these, like, 24 random words. And they're like, they just look at you like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? um because like they'll expect it to be like a saying or a phrase that you come up with, like a password. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, it's kind of like a password, but like it generates it for you. And it's like, oh, okay, well, it must be like of some, is it like a sentence? And I'm like, no, it'll be like, you know, frog, tree, sky, like it's just, it's purely random. So what are those words? Where do they come from, and how do they input, how do they work as the seed phrase?
I can imagine people looking at you with like you're
It's like
crazy.
I have like two heads, and I'm like, I don't, they're like, don't you have like a password and you can just reset it? And I'm like, not really. Um,
So yeah, the mnemonic word list, the 12 or 24 sets of words. So it's a pretty clever thing. Basically, it's just transforming a random number, this entropy that you generate for your seed, into a set of words from a word list. There's about 2,000 words in that word list. And that's enough words to have uh, you know, basically infinite possibilities of seeds. And so a lot of people get worried, oh, wouldn't someone else just generate the same set of words? And that's feasibly, or it's basically infeasible in the sense that the number of possibilities is, I think, more than the number of atoms in the observable universe.
wow.
Um, yeah. So you don't have to worry about that. And then it's pretty clever approach, I would say, because it helps people remember their seeds better and also avoid making mistakes when they're copying it down or rewriting it. Because the normal way to, well, it's a binary number, right? So one way to represent that was with just random numbers and letters. So a long string of 64 uh, or not 64, but a long string of just random characters. That's really easy to mess up and make mistakes. And so the word
Hmm.
list was designed to make that easier. That said, with the Bitbox, we do follow that standard, but we try to hide it from the user because exactly this issue, this people not understanding what a mnemonic is. When you set up most wallets, uh, it can take 20 to 30 minutes to do the setup. And the reason for that is you need to copy down these words. It's very stressful for people, we found, in the sense that they don't understand what's happening. If you make one mistake with one letter, you could be locked out of your funds, not be able to recover them. And uh, yeah, it's not so nice from the user experience. And so what we do instead is we have onboard the Bitbox as a micro SD card slot. And so we take this word list and we just save it to the micro SD card slot. And so a setup with a Bitbox is pretty painless. It can take a minute or so. And people understand the concept of a backup. And so it's a lot more familiar for people. And basically, you just take this SD card. You don't need to use it when you use the device. You just store it somewhere safe, just like you'd store a word list somewhere safe.
Hmm. Um, okay, so you guys take the worry out of, and that's one thing I liked about the Bitbox is that because the first time I used a hardware wallet, I was like, what did I get myself into? Like it made me like question Bitcoin in general. I'm like, is this feasible going forward? And it is. It's just it's a stressful experience. Like that's probably the best way to. I mean, you're in the business of this, so you get it. But that's I think a very accurate way to describe it is it's very stressful, and afterwards you're like, whew, okay, like I got that done. But I mean, what is that something that you also led to like the simplification of the design? And because what I always, brag about to people is I'm like, look, if you're super technical and you want to, people can create wallets, however they want to create them, on CDs and random stuff like that. I was like, but this is not intimidating. And I always say a lot of times in like the reads, I'll be like, you know, I literally it like sometimes can be addicting to send more funds off of the exchange. Like the first time I did it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna move a little bit, and I was like, oh, that was easy. Move a little more, move a little more. So now it's like then I started buying just so that I could transfer. And I was like, okay, this is going to get dangerous real quick because I'm just going to buy more Bitcoin than I can afford at the moment. But yeah, I guess so. It's something I like about it, but I guess address the market need and what you were seeing at the time whenever you guys decided to take that simplified route.
Yeah. So of course, I'm biased. I think we do have the highest or the best security model for a lot of different reasons. But what we found though is that in order to sell devices, people just kind of assume you have good security. So what you really need to do is make it easy for them, make them comfortable. And so that's been a big focus of our company. The SD card is one, but we have a number of other things also that go into that, including a very minimal app. Uh, and we try to take away as much complexity as we can and make it as simple as possible for the user. I guess one of the motivations for me to actually turn the Bitbox into a company was because I saw that there was a really immense potential for this to kind of change the world in a lot of different ways. And if I could, help people who are interested to get involved, such that you don't have to be very technical. You don't need all this technical understanding. If I could equip people with tools, like empower them to take part, I thought that would be quite special and rewarding. And so that was a big focus for me, or big motivation for me to go ahead and try to start a company, bring such tools to the people.
So you guys are listening to me talk to Douglas, who is the founder of Shift Crypto and the creator of the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. And I hope you guys are enjoying this conversation, but I wanted to just drop in a message that you guys should stop what you're doing. And if you do not have a hardware wallet, if you do not have a Bitbox, go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple and grab yourself a Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. Use the promo code Bitcoin Made Simple to get 5% off your order. And like I said, I mean, you hear us talk about it in this interview. I can't remember based on where I dropped this if I've talked about it yet or not with Douglas, but the simplistic design is where it's at. It makes it so simple. And like he describes in this episode, their goal was to make self custody less stressful. And they do a great job with that. So go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple and get the least stressful hardware wallet in the world and also the sleek and sexiest one, as Luke would say. So, go shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple. And again, use promo code Bitcoin made simple to get 5% off. Yeah, make it easier for people. I always joke and say, I'm like, if a smooth brain person like me can do it, then anyone can do it. Um, and it's yeah, and I can't stress to people the importance of you know of getting your coins off the exchange. Um, and and do you think I mean, I'm sure you've seen a interesting business trajectory here during the bear market because inevitably during a bear market there's going to be lulls and ups and downs. I mean, like I even see, the podcast is surprisingly still doing well. But like at peak bull market, it was like I was like, oh my God, I'm like gonna be like Joe Rogan or something. There's just so many people listening talking about Bitcoin. Um, and so there's lulls and we get it, but uh I have to think that you guys have seen an interesting bear market here because this bear market has really been built around self custody. I think, that's been the main theme of this bear market. What have you guys seen, business wise? Because I'm sure there were some down parts, but are people taking self custody seriously?
Yeah, so we've definitely seen that. We see a definite growing awareness of the need for hardware wallets, the need for self-custody, what function it actually serves. And I mean, there can't be any better advertisement. It's unfortunate, but it's a good advertisement for hardware wallets is the FTX collapse.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, we saw, I think, our best week of sales ever.
Oh wow.
Um, And this was, when was this? In November, I believe. And the bear market, the downward trajectory started last January, a year ago, over a year ago. And so, despite the downward trend in the market, we get huge peaks in sales due to events like FTX and prior to that Celsius, and also the January 3rd, the um, oh, I forget what it's called, where yeah, um, the Bitcoin anniversary, but it's also now get your keys off the exchanges. So like try to
Yeah.
do a forcible proof of reserve, um, and that's also a huge spike in sales for us. And so we definitely see a growing awareness. Of course, overall, bear market, you get less and less. I guess new people coming into the space, and so from a hardware wallet perspective, new people is where the customers are going to come from. But it's been much better than the previous bear market 4 years ago.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, you don't want to see people lose their funds, but you know, it was just like I tell people, I'm like, look, if I'm not gonna take any sponsor, and you guys obviously have sponsored the show, so I greatly appreciate that. But like, if anyone here has gotten into the Bitcoin space, you see all the spam that you get of people trying to get you to do different things. And then if you run a podcast, there's an increased, and you could easily shell out and just, go the crypto route and, make some money um, at at, I guess, on other people's backs. But I was very specific. I was like, if I'm going to bring somebody on, it's got to be something that, first of all, is a product I like, and second of all is like important for Bitcoin. Um, so it's been so easy to try and like just talk to people about it in the podcast. I'm like, look, like I don't know what else you guys need. Like the best advertisement possible is that all of your funds could immediately be gone because these companies are rehypothecating it, and
Mm.
um, I sleep very soundly knowing that my coins are off the exchange. Um, I've also found too that I feel as though because it's very simple to send the money, like say if I needed to send, you know, however much Bitcoin to somebody to you right now from the Bitbox, like I could go get it, in my undisclosed location behind the certain security that it's, behind, and plug it in, and within 5 minutes have the transaction processing, and the only thing that really takes time is the actual on-chain transaction, which is what happens anywhere with Bitcoin. But it's really not that hard. It doesn't take that long, and the fees have gone up here recently, but like for the most part, the fees are like peanuts. It doesn't it's less than a credit card transaction. Um, so it's very simple, but even though it's that simple to get it on, when there is, say, a 20% dip in the price, if it's on an app on your phone and you can within 2-3 clicks of your thumb sell it, I feel as though a hardware wallet is a protection against from impulse selling. Do you guys see that?
um,
I don't know if that's necessarily a marketing term you want to use, but I tell people like it saves you from being like, oh my God, the price, and then you sell, and then you're like, oh, why did I do that? Um,
um, it raises the barrier, yeah, but still, it's a bit easy to use. So maybe it's too easy to use in that sense. So probably the better thing would be to yeah, stick to um, yeah, a backup on a piece of metal or a piece of paper.
it's
um,
yeah, it's probably the best way to, if you want to make it even harder. I've told people before what I'm gonna do, and I joke with my wife about this. I said, what I'm gonna do for our kids is I'm gonna send them on like a national treasure level hunt around the world to like recover the keys and be able to recover the wallet. Um, so that whenever we die, at the beginning it'll be like therapeutic, because at the beginning they'll be like, they'll be sad that we're gone, and then it'll take them so long and be so difficult for them to recover it, traveling the world, that they'll be like MFing us by the end, and they'll be like, you know what, I'm glad he's gone. Like, um, so maybe at the end of that, rainbow, there will be the Bitbox device that we could, um, put in place and have them recover it. I've also thought too, I want to pitch a show idea to you because my background's in the movie and film TV industry. Um, so what do you think about the idea of a show where there's a Bitbox hardware wallet with Bitcoin on it, and we leave a trail of breadcrumbs and just open it up to people like, hey, here's the initial clues. And you can find it if you want to find it. Do you think people would tune into something like that?
It's there's an actual real Bitbox at the end,
Yeah, like a real Bitbox at the end, and they it
real
has,
money.
yeah, it has the money on it, and it has the Bitcoin on it, and they have to follow the trail of clues and decipher different things, almost like an Amazing Race type thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and it could. I think it'd be fun because then you could open up the first set of clues and be like, hey, look, this is for anybody to find.
I think that would be a fun show.
You think people would join in and search for how much Bitcoin would be required to be on there for people to really jump into it?
Good question. I don't know. That's going to depend on their jurisdiction, I guess.
Yeah,
Um, if you stick to the US, yeah, probably something in the five digits would work.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, what are we at now price wise? It's like 25. Because I always thought like, oh, you do like one solid Bitcoin, but then like when the price was down to like 15, I was like, I mean, it's still a lot, but if someone's gonna travel all over the country,
Mm.
to find different pieces and try and pull it together, it
It has to cover their travel costs.
yeah, yeah, they can't be, I would think at most spending $2,500 hunting something down that's worth 25,000, so yeah, I think that'd be fascinating. So good to know that if you think you like the idea, so if I come in and say, hey, let's use a Bitbox, you're not gonna be like, what in the world is this?
For sure.
Um, so like we talked about, you mentioned earlier with the banking earlier, the off ramps, on ramps. This is a little
Yeah.
bit less to do with hardware wallet, but also I think underlines the importance of having a hardware wallet. Um, do you think we're going to be heading back towards, because in 2014 you said it was, the on and off ramps weren't really there. You couldn't use your local bank to transfer money directly into an exchange. Uh, and now we've seen with this like recent events of SVB and everything, and there seems to be a choke point coming on to Bitcoin, where they're trying to choke it off and close the on ramps. Do you think we're heading in that direction? What do you think it's going to look like over the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but I mean, one thing, of course, one of the unique things about Bitcoin is it's decentralized,
Hmm.
so censorship resistant. You can't stop it, right?
Yeah.
So Bitcoin, you can't stop. Fiat, of course, governments have some control there. They can try to stop it. But the thing is, since it's decentralized, that means lots of other countries can also do something with it. And so even if the US completely shuts it off, there's going to be other countries that are still going to be accessible. Um, and right now, it looks like the choke points with the recent bank closures are for US businesses rather than US individuals, like private individuals. So private
Hmm.
individuals, I think all the on ramps, off ramps are still there. They're all fully functional. And you have exchanges, on the stock exchange. And so I think that's going to continue. And the U.S. also, each state has kind of its own rules, so it's a bit decentralized in that sense too. So whatever, if New York wants to try to stop things, but California doesn't, you know, good for the people and the whole country.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like uh, the big banks serving businesses, you know, there's a lot of banks around the world, and so businesses can find banking relationships with other banks in maybe a bit more favorable at the moment jurisdictions. And I think, yeah, it's probably going to be some headaches for a while, but there's a solution to it. And the thing is, it's like cryptocurrency as a whole is $1 trillion market cap at the moment. And so there's a lot of money there. And if there's a lot of money there, there's going to be people wanting to, take advantage of it and make money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough capitalistic uh, ecosystems in the world that I'm not too worried about it long term.
Um, yeah, I have a feeling if you are a company that walks into the bank right now and says, "Hi, I'm a Bitcoin company, and we're strictly Bitcoin," I mean, I don't know though, because like it depends. Say you're starting. What do you think if you're starting a mining company? You know, that's not necessarily you're not trying to be an exchange or anything like that. You're just mining or a hardware wallet. Like you're trading goods and services. And even though you're a Bitcoin company, it's still working through fiat.
Mhm.
I don't see that as being something that they see as risky. What do you think?
Um, yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. And I think in our particular case, also, we're not directly dealing with uh, coins ourselves. We're selling hardware, really selling wallets that people can use for their own coins. Um, and I think, yeah, also, yeah, I'd agree with that. Also, I'm not so worried.
Yeah. Um, Now you mentioned you were into studied neuroscience and all that, and you mentioned AI at one point was something you were dealing with probably way before anybody was even thinking about it. Um, so what was your background in AI?
Yeah. Um, so I actually have yeah, bachelor's, master's degrees in mechanical engineering, and I was focusing on robotics and some AI, things like that. And that's actually what led me into neuroscience.
Okay.
Because this is a while ago. So things are different now, but back then I really felt that AI itself, the algorithms being used were extremely primitive. I think they probably still are. I'm not into the field as much anymore, although you can still get quite phenomenal results out of it. And so I thought it was so primitive that more research needs to be done on just the theory behind like AI algorithms and stuff like that. And so I decided to switch to neuroscience to study real intelligence.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so my research in neuroscience was studying how networks of neurons communicate and how that could lead to learning and memory. And so my idea was to jump into neuroscience for a bit, try to pick something up, and then maybe jump back into AI later. But yeah, I got stuck into neuroscience and then transitioned into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So yeah,
As one does.
maybe when I retire, I can jump back into AI.
Um, yeah, it's fascinating to me, the AI conversation, because, you know, when people are like, oh, computer would never really be, possible of doing different things. And I'm like, you realize there's electricity in our body. Like, you know, like our neural network, our synapses are, like there's electricity going but in your brain. And um, even like I'm reading these books with my kids about they're fascinated right now with like orcas and sharks and stuff like that. And I'm like, in there it's talking about how sharks will use their sensors to pick up on electrical signals from other animals. And so I'm like sitting there like, I don't know, like in a way we're kind of robots, like it's like we're robots with made of organic material. Um, and so I don't think it's a crazy to think about. Um, have you? I mean, I'm sure it just came out today that Chat GPT 4. Um, but what have you played around with that at all? What do you think that poses for the future of like day-to-day stuff? I mean, the new one, I think they said it's like crushing the bar exam and like SATs, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So is it something we should be worried about or excited about?
Um, yeah, I mean, in general, with any new technology, can be used for good and evil. And so it's really what people do with it. I think when it comes to AI, what scares people a bit is that they think, okay, it's not going to be people doing something with AI, it's going to be AI doing something with AI. And then there's a fear of, okay, yeah, is AI evil and things like that. Um, I'm not really worried about it. Um, and I think part of it is, maybe a long time in the future, it'll be different, but in the short term, I'm not really worried about it. And so, yeah, Chat GPT is doing like really phenomenal, amazing things. Um, but it's still, I would say, a bit limited. So the what I've played with, use it a bit. It's really amazing, but it's really some people, call it basically like uh, a new way to kind of do search.
Hmm.
Um, and so with AI algorithms today, you have to feed it data. You have to train it on data. And so even Chat GPT, as far as I understand, is humans basically saying, okay, this is correct, this is not correct, this is correct, this is not correct. So there's a lot of human involvement in actually training the AI itself. And so to say it's like an autonomous AI thing, I think is not true. There's still a huge human element into this, both in terms of being trained and also being the data sets being trained on, which are all generated by humans. And I think so. Yeah, a really great way to do search right now, and to take search data and compile it into very useful things, like essays and whatever, beautiful art. Sure, but if you look at and so I think what a lot of people underestimate if they're not into the biological sciences is actually the amount of complexity that exists in biological creatures. And so, for example, yes, the brain uses electrical signals to communicate with itself. But the thing is, it does this in an analog way. So on all different types of time scales from microseconds to years. And also on a lot of different spatial scales in a lot of different ways. And so, like, if you just look inside one single neuron, the amount of computational complexity going on, it, I don't know exact numbers, but I would say it's probably orders of magnitude more than the biggest supercomputer that exists right now. Just because you have all of these different types of computations going on at the molecular level, at the synapse level, on all these different time scales. And so I think, yes, computers have always been good at doing things that humans are not good at, but also vice versa. Humans are good at things that computers are not necessarily good at. Um, and so I think if you want to get to a point where AI is starting to rival humans, you actually need to change the architecture of digital computers into something that's more analog, and something uh, more computationally parallel. And so in the brain, you have one neuron, but you have, I think, there's more synapses in the brain, the connections between neurons than stars in the universe. And so you have this one neuron with this huge complexity, computational complexity, but then you have lots and lots of neurons also, and they're all talking to each other. And then it just explodes the computational complexity that comes out of that. And so I think to really advance AI in bigger steps, you need to do some kind of similar type of architecture, fundamentally change how digital, or let's say maybe digital is not the right word, but the opposite of organic, whatever that is.
Yeah.
The architecture of that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's just so much, like so many fascinating rabbit holes to go down. And I do think that, like, I agree with you. I'm like, I think we're pretty far off from even scratching the surface on,
Mm.
coming close to what, the human mind is capable of. Um, and, have you ever seen the Fantastic Fungi documentary
No, I
about
don't think so.
mushrooms? It was interesting, and I've done like just a little bit of research on it, but uh, like fungus will grow in like a neural network,
Hmm.
and uh, and it seems as though they believe it can send messages between, like, there'll be fungus that goes from a tree to another tree,
Hmm.
and it can send messages to each other and actually send carbon, like it can send its like life force to it as it's dying.
Nutrients, yeah, yeah.
And uh so I just think that's fascinating. That, or is it in your study, you don't have to get too crazy into it, just as a general question, but in your study of neuroscience, like, is that what, so is that what this, like, it's an organic material that like we really can't replicate, um, but like other organisms can?
Um, Maybe I don't understand the
I
question.
guess, yeah. Well, yeah, I guess I didn't really phrase that properly. Like, um, I just think it's fascinating that are there other neural networks we don't know about, in the world, that in the observable world?
Well, I mean, neural refers to brains, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
But other types of information networks in the world, yeah, I'm sure.
Like, do you know of any organic informational networks outside of, like, I know the fungus one, I'm like, oh, that's pretty fascinating, but I see people talk about like stars, and they're like, oh, look at like the galaxy. It kind of looks like a neural network, like the way they work with gravity and everything like that. Um, is there other stuff, other rabbit holes in the neural science that I should like go down and explore?
Yeah, I don't think I can give a good answer, but I guess like maybe just some keywords like graph theory, things like that, is analyzing uh, just how networks are constructed and how different types of network architectures can lead to different kinds of emergent phenomenon. And so I think there's graph theory. There's also some really beautiful work on just patterns in nature and how patterns arise. Um, and yeah, I can't go much deeper.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's kind of what I was looking for, is like, I love rabbit holes. I think people that listen to this podcast and are Bitcoiners really like rabbit holes as well. Um, and so I was like, as soon as you said you were in the like you did neuroscience, I was like, oh, I kind of have a
There's a
couple
rabbit
questions.
hole.
Yeah, I was like, there's some rabbit, there's probably more to it than, the fungus one. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And then, um, I get fascinated by like gravity and its connection to everything, and magnetism, different things, wireless transmission of data, all that kind of fascinating stuff that I'll sit there and talk to my wife about it, and she's like, "Oh my, it just like, I don't. Please stop talking." She doesn't care at all, but she'll give me like 5 minutes. She's like, "Okay, you have 5 minutes to talk about this thing that I'm not interested in," and I'm like, "Blah, blah, blah," and I start talking about it. Um, anyway, so, well, thank you so much, Douglas, for coming on, and thank you for supporting the show. Because I really do believe in the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet, and everything you guys are doing. So, tell people what they can look forward to, anything on the horizon with Bitbox, any new products, anything that they should keep an eye out for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, thank you also. Happy to sponsor you or happy to support your mission. I think it's great. There's people like you out there trying to educate the world. So very happy about that. And as far as us, yeah, if you want to learn more, you can find us on shiftcrypto.ch. Follow us on Twitter. We have a pretty active Telegram channel. Happy to get people to come in and give us feedback about what you'd like us to do.
Yeah.
We're actually pretty proud. We just released a new update in partnership with another Swiss company called Pocket, uh, which makes buying Bitcoin very easy. And so the nice thing about Switzerland is um, you basically don't need KYC, know your customers stuff. You don't have to give your passport if you're making daily purchases under 1,000 Swiss francs, about $1,000. Um, and we just made a partnership with them. So within the Bitbox app itself, you can now buy Bitcoin very easily
And
um,
non KYC.
in non KYC if you stick to those limits. You
Wow.
you will need a European IBAN, a bank number. But I mean, even people in the US can get those nowadays with like Revolut or Wise, for example. And so I'd say this is probably open to people from the US too, although don't hold me on that. But it's of course geared towards the European community. Um, and so non KYC is pretty cool. So we're quite excited about that. And Pocket, I think, shares a lot of the philosophy that both you and I have also.
Yeah.
And also, we'd be happy for your feedback because we're now reaching out to our customers and the market in general, just to kind of probe some ideas for a potential new hardware wallet that we're going to be working on.
Awesome. Well, you hear that, everybody. Send your tips and everything to shiftcrypto.ch, and that's really awesome. That I did notice in the app that you can buy Bitcoin. I haven't done it yet through there.
Just released. Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. And I didn't know that it was KYC free, which honestly people would pay like a premium for that, So that's good to know that it's
It's yeah,
becoming
it's
available.
KYC free and perhaps the cheapest way to get Bitcoin.
Oh,
So low rates also.
awesome. Well, I thank you so much, and I hope people start using that. And again, as always, thanks for supporting the show.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks again to Douglas for joining the show. Loved hearing his story, and then even getting into the neuroscience rabbit hole. And also thanks again to his company, Shift Crypto. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple and get yourself a Bitbox O2 hardware wallet and take your coins off the exchange. And I will talk to you guys later.